Are you ready to learn the chilling truth about the most harrowing and dramatic ordeal in the history of Native Americans? Welcome to the channel. Today we'll talk about events that will literally send shivers down your spine. The fall of 1838 is far from just a dry date in a high school history textbook. It is a time that hides within it the dark secrets of incredible, extraordinary human resilience. The events of those cold months forever changed the fates of thousands of families and rewrote the history of entire tribes. Picture this scene: biting cold, winter looming, utter despair, and people teetering on the very brink of destruction. It was then that the harsh, merciless winds of the Great Plains became the sole witnesses to a truly great, yet utterly silent, act of heroism by a single woman from the Lakota tribe. What she did is beyond the comprehension of a modern, well-fed person. Her unfathomable decision to give up her last tiny handful of food so that her children could survive became the greatest symbol of absolute maternal self-sacrifice. This story is guaranteed to move you. So be sure to watch this video all the way to the end, and you'll learn the shocking details of how the most ordinary slice of bread suddenly became a ticket to a better future for an entire generation. You'll understand how one small decision saved an entire family. What if I told you that everything you believed was a lie? The story of survival on the endless plains is often described as a series of epic battles and great victories. In reality, the true struggle unfolded in the absolute silence of the autumn steppes during long treks. The cold wind of 1838 brought with it trials for which it was impossible to prepare in advance. The usual migration routes were cut off, and food supplies were dwindling at an alarming rate. A woman from the Lakota tribe walked through the thick, yellowed autumn grass. The headwind ruffled the fringe on her traditional garment made of thick deerskin. Each of her steps was measured and quiet, to conserve precious physical energy. The ground beneath her feet was growing harder as the approaching heavy night frost set in. Nature all around was slowly falling asleep, leaving the travelers alone to face the looming harsh winter. The tribe had always had strict rules for allocating resources during the cold season. Usually, dried meat and gathered berries were stored in special large leather bags. These supplies allowed them to survive the snowiest months without having to constantly search for fresh food. However, this time, the migration route had completely disrupted all their usual schedules for autumn preparations. The remaining supplies were barely enough to sustain their strength during the long journey on foot. In the woman's small, worn bag, there was only one piece of dense, dry bread left. This bread was made from dried, nutritious roots and ground wild herb seeds. Such food was highly valuable and could sustain an adult for an entire day. She carefully took out this ration, mentally assessing its light weight in the palm of her hand. It was the very last edible supply that stood between her and complete exhaustion. The decision formed in her mind instantly, and without the slightest inner hesitation. She carefully divided the flatbread, leaving her own hands completely empty. This food was intended for those who would carry on the legacy of their ancient lineage in new lands. The woman silently set aside her share, completely forgoing the energy she desperately needed to survive. Her face remained utterly calm, showing not a shadow of doubt about the rightness of her action. By the evening of the first day without food, her gait had become slightly smoother and more cautious. Her body had begun to gradually adapt to the new regime of strict energy conservation. She tried to breathe evenly and avoid sudden movements as she walked monotonously. Stopping for the night brought only temporary relief to her severely fatigued muscles. Ahead lay 2 more long days of travel across the harsh and cold autumn plain. This act marked the beginning of an extremely grueling 3-day test of human endurance. Strength of spirit proved to be far more important than the basic physical need for food. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about such remarkable self-sacrifice under extreme conditions? Share your thoughts in the comments. And be sure to subscribe to our channel to explore history with us. I'll reveal the best-kept secret of survival in the wilds of the Great Plains. True endurance isn't tested on the first day of deprivation, but on the second. When the body completely depletes its energy reserves, the world around you begins to look completely different. Sounds become more muffled, and the colors of the autumn steppe take on extraordinary sharpness. It was in this state that the woman continued her endless march toward the far west. The morning of the second day greeted the travelers with a thick fog, low-lying over the lowlands. Moisture settled on their leather garments, making them heavy and uncomfortably cold. Without the inner energy provided by food, it was incredibly difficult to stay warm in the wind. The woman wrapped her cloak, sewn from thick bison hide, more tightly around herself. She moved rhythmically, trying to turn her walking into a mechanical action that required no conscious thought. With every step, the soft soles of her moccasins touched the damp, hard ground silently. She chose her path instinctively, steering clear of sharp rocks and prickly dry bushes. Her gaze was fixed straight ahead, clearly focused on the horizon. Any unnecessary head movements could easily cause the slight dizziness characteristic of prolonged fasting. Maintaining her balance had become her most important physical task on this foggy day. Breathing had become a complex process, requiring constant control and close attention. She inhaled the cold air through her nose to warm it slightly before it reached her lungs. Her exhalation was slow and smooth, as if she were trying to hold on to the last remnants of warmth within herself. This breathing technique was excellent for stabilizing her heart rate during sustained physical exertion. The ancient wisdom of her ancestors guided her in maintaining the correct rhythm of movement through the thick fog. The surrounding nature seemed to be testing her resolve, with icy gusts of a strong north wind. Tall stalks of dry grass bent all the way to the ground under its powerful force. The woman leaned her upper body slightly forward, struggling to overcome the resistance of the air currents. Her silhouette against the backdrop of the endless plain seemed fragile yet incredibly steady. She blended into the landscape, becoming an integral part of this harsh autumn landscape. By midday, the fog had finally cleared, revealing rocky ridges in the distance. The sun shone dimly, offering none of the much-needed warmth to her weary body. A strange feeling of lightness in her body grew more pronounced with every passing hour. It was a deceptive sign of deep exhaustion, one that experienced travelers knew how to recognize. She did not allow herself to quicken her pace, maintaining a strictly measured and steady rhythm. She also had very little water on the journey and had to use it as sparingly as possible. The woman took only small sips from her leather flask, moistening her parched throat. The cold water burned from the inside, forcing her body to expend its last reserves of energy on internal warmth. So she held the water in her mouth for a while before slowly swallowing it. This helped significantly reduce. Surviving this long night was just as important as continuing on her way in the morning. What kind of hidden reserves do you think people tap into at moments like this? Do you agree that mental strength surpasses physical endurance in extreme conditions? Please share your thoughts on this in the comments below the video. In the next chapter, you'll learn how she coped with the third day of this endless journey. Something you've never seen before lies hidden deep within the ancient practices of indigenous peoples. We'll be discussing forgotten techniques for achieving absolute control over one's own exhausted body. The indigenous peoples of the plains knew how to slow their metabolism through a deep trance while walking. This complex process allowed them to conserve heat even in the complete absence of incoming calories. A woman used this practice to successfully survive her third day without a crumb of food. The essence of this ancient method lay in completely shutting off emotions and extraneous thoughts. Any emotional turmoil or intense anxiety causes the heart to beat faster, burning precious energy. She completely cleared her mind, leaving in it only the image of an endless dusty path. Her consciousness narrowed to the size of a single step that she had to take right now. The world around her ceased to exist, giving way to a deep and unshakable inner calm. The third day of the journey is always considered a critical milestone during any prolonged fast. The body finally realizes that no food is coming and switches to a mode of extreme conservation. The woman's movements became as smooth as a dry leaf floating down a river. She did not lift her legs high, but rather seemed to glide them across the hard surface of the ground. This minimized the strain on her joints and reliably conserved what little muscle strength she had left. The sun had risen high, illuminating the endless expanses of the parched autumn prairie. That day, she had to cross a wide, rocky valley without a single tree. The ground here was strewn with tiny shards of quartz that glinted brightly in the light. This monotonous glare could very easily blind a tired and hungry person. The woman lowered her gaze, carefully shielding her eyes from the harsh sun's glare. The wind in this rocky valley met no obstacles and blew with unrelenting force. It seeped through the seams of her leather clothing, mercilessly trying to steal the last vestiges of warmth. She used a wide strip of thick fabric to carefully wrap her face and neck. This created a small pocket of warm air around her airways. This trick worked perfectly to keep her core body temperature at a manageable level. By evening, the valley had given way to gentle hills, thickly overgrown with sparse low shrubs. Climbing a slope always required a completely different kind of effort than walking on level ground. She placed her foot sideways to significantly increase her base of support on the loose soil. Her strides grew even shorter, and her breathing turned into deep, heavy, measured gasps. Conquering each hill felt like scaling a massive, impregnable mountain peak. As the sun touched the horizon, she reached the top of the last steep hill of the day. Below lay a wide plain, crisscrossed by the winding bed of a half-dried-up river. This meant that the most grueling stretch of the day's trek was now safely behind her. Her body trembled slightly from severe exhaustion, but her spirit remained unyielding and crystal clear. She had proven to herself that she was capable of overcoming the physical limitations of the human body. Ancient survival techniques had once again demonstrated their incredible effectiveness in the harshest of conditions. The knowledge of her ancestors had helped her stay alive in the face of a complete lack of basic resources. These unique skills have been passed down from generation to generation for centuries on the Great Plains. Please like this video if you're inspired by the wisdom of the indigenous peoples of North America. Your support helps our channel regularly produce more in-depth historical content like this. The secret passed down from generation to generation lies in the ability to never give up. The fourth cold morning began with the realization that the destination was very close indeed. The last few miles are always the hardest, since the final goal is already clearly in sight. Sensing the imminent end of the grueling journey, the body tries to relax before its time. The woman had to muster all her remaining strength for this final push. The surrounding landscape began to change gradually, signaling that she was approaching foreign lands. Deep ruts from heavy wooden carts appeared, carved deeply into the soft soil. The grass here had been trampled by the thousands of feet of those who had traveled this route a short while earlier. These tracks served as a silent guide, precisely indicating the correct direction. She walked along these well-trodden paths, physically sensing the weight of the journey others had taken. The morning chill gave way to a bright, sunny day that was unexpectedly warm for late fall. This warmth, which should have been a source of joy, now brought only an all-consuming weakness. The heated air seemed too thick and heavy for her lungs. Exhausted by the long trek, she unbuttoned her thick outer cloak to let the fresh breeze cool her body a little. Every step along the warm, dusty road demanded tremendous mental and physical effort. In the distance, she could make out neat wooden structures and gray smoke rising from numerous campfires. This was her destination, the reservation, where this arduous autumn journey would finally come to an end. The sight of human dwellings did not fill her with wild joy or long-awaited relief. Inside, there remained only absolute emptiness and a burning desire to simply lie down on the dry ground. She continued walking with the same detached expression on her face as she had worn all the previous days. Tall wooden fences stood at the settlement's gate, beyond which a completely new life began. These posts symbolized the end of the freedom of the boundless plains and the beginning of a harsh era of restrictions. She approached the gate, slowly leaning on a dry branch she had found by chance along the way. Her eyes were calm, yet they revealed the bottomless depth of the experience she had just gone through. She crossed the imaginary line, successfully completing her incredible journey on foot through the fall. The first thing she did once inside was to find a large flat stone near an old broken-down wagon. She lowered herself onto it very carefully, allowing her tense muscles to finally relax completely. The ground was no longer moving toward her, and the horizon was no longer an eternally unreachable line. 3 days of complete starvation and non-stop walking were officially a thing of the distant past. Now her most important task was to regain her strength in these entirely new conditions. They brought her a small clay bowl of hot, thin corn soup. Eating after such a long period of absolute starvation required extreme caution and the smallest of portions. She took one tiny sip, letting the warm liquid slowly trickle down her parched throat. Her body struggled immensely to accept the food, having almost forgotten the process of digestion during those long days. It was a slow return to life that required time and incredible patience. Reaching the end of her journey was only the beginning of a new phase in her incredibly difficult life. She had fulfilled her main mission, making it to the end without a single piece of dry bread. This feat will forever go down in history as the most striking example of absolute self-sacrifice. Did you know about these amazing facts of human endurance before watching our video? In the next chapter, you'll learn how her life unfolded under these completely new circumstances. Life on the reservation was radically different from the familiar way of life of the nomadic peoples of the boundless plains. The vast prairies gave way to strictly limited plots of dry land set aside for habitation. Wooden huts completely replaced the traditional tipis, which could be easily moved from place to place. The air here was constantly thick with the acrid smell of smoke from burning coal stoves. These drastic changes placed enormous strain on people accustomed to absolute freedom. The woman's body, severely weakened by 3 days of starvation, struggled immensely to adapt to the new food. Government rations consisted mainly of white flour, sugar, and salted pieces of meat. These foods were completely foreign to the digestive systems of the indigenous peoples of North America. Because of this, the process of regaining physical strength proceeded at a catastrophically slow and arduous pace. Her body, having endured the harsh transition, was now struggling in vain to cope with the consequences of the change in diet. Her physical weakness showed no signs of abating, despite regular meals and the absence of exhausting walks. The immense stress she had endured had left a deep mark at the cellular level of her exhausted body. Her movements remained extremely sluggish, and her breathing often became labored even during light housework. She understood perfectly well that autumn migration had drained her of too much vital energy. Restoring these invisible internal reserves under the conditions of the reservation was a nearly impossible task. The weather was rapidly deteriorating, bringing with it very cold rains and the first heavy snowfalls. Dampness easily seeped through the cracks in the wooden walls, forcing her to constantly wrap herself in old animal skins. Traditional methods of heating the tipi didn't work at all here, and the huts remained freezing cold. The lack of constant physical activity made the cold even more biting and unbearable. Her body expended its last reserves of energy just to maintain a minimum body temperature while at rest. She took great care to preserve that very leather bag in which her last piece of bread had lain. This empty object had become an important symbol of her choice and a tangible reminder of the long journey. Sometimes she would simply run her hands slowly over the worn leather, as if drawing strength from it. Enclosed within this simple bag was the story of the greatest maternal sacrifice and unconditional love. It was her personal artifact, invisibly linking the past to the present moment. Her interactions with her new neighbors were limited to brief greetings and the exchange of small household items. She absolutely hated talking about exactly how she had managed to make that journey. A true feat never requires grand words or universal admiration from those around her. It simply lives quietly in the heart of the one who was able to transcend their own limits. Her neighbors deeply respected her silence, sensing the aura of calm inner strength emanating from her. Each new morning began with a difficult struggle to get out of bed and start the day. The muscles that had endured tremendous strain on the prairie now ached with every movement. Her joints had completely lost their former flexibility, making her gait stiff and somewhat awkward. This was the perfectly natural withering of a body that had given all its vitality for a single purpose. Nature was mercilessly exacting its toll for the incredible effort expended on the autumn trail. A month of life on the reservation vividly revealed the full gravity of the consequences of the people's forced relocation. The people were rapidly losing not only their ancestral lands, but also their primal vitality. The walls of the houses provided reliable shelter from the wind, but they could not protect against the destruction of their familiar world. The woman had become the living embodiment of this difficult era of change and irreplaceable personal losses. Her personal story was moving inexorably and slowly toward its logical and quiet conclusion. Are you ready for the shocking truth about the consequences of extreme physical survival? The human body is a highly complex mechanism that does not forgive being pushed to the absolute limit. Once the critical situation has passed, the body often simply refuses to function any further. That invisible reserve of strength that had kept the woman on her feet during her journey had completely dried up. Now, having reached relative safety, her body had begun the process of slow and irreversible decline. Exactly 1 month had passed since that memorable day when she stepped through the wooden gate of the reservation. During that long time, her physical condition had never returned to normal. The pallor of her skin had become alarmingly constant, and her facial features had sharpened, taking on a sculpted sharpness. She ventured out onto the creaking porch less and less often, preferring to stay inside the dimly lit wooden hut. The bright daylight now greatly strained her eyes, which had grown accustomed to the muted tones of the steppe. The government-provided food no longer brought the expected sense of fullness and did nothing to restore her lost strength. She ate only in tiny portions, mechanically chewing a hard flatbread made of white flour. The act of eating had finally turned into a burdensome duty that had to be performed every day. The inner fire that had reliably warmed her during her trance on the journey had been extinguished forever. All that remained was barely smoldering embers, barely sustaining the basic functions of her emaciated body. Her breathing had become very shallow and quiet, like the faint rustle of dry grass in a light breeze. It was incredibly difficult for her to take a deep breath, as it required effort from her chest muscles. She lay quietly on the bed, covered by a heavy woolen blanket that offered no warmth at all. The cold now emanated continuously from within, from the very deepest recesses of her weary bones. It was a feeling of absolute exhaustion that could no longer be combated by any medication. She felt absolutely no fear of the inevitable end of her earthly journey on these plains. In the ancient Lakota culture, the transition to the other world was viewed as a completely natural continuation of existence. It was a long-awaited return to her ancestors, to the mighty spirits of the earth, the wind, and the endless sky. Her primary mission had been fully accomplished the moment she set aside her portion of bread. The rest of her life was merely a very brief wait before the great journey beyond the invisible threshold. Her weakened hands lay perfectly still on top of the coarse blanket, making no unnecessary movements. Her fingers were very cold and slender, as if skillfully carved from light, dry wood. She conserved her energy, even in this motionless state, mentally preparing for her final step. The room was thick with silence, broken only by the monotonous patter of autumn raindrops. This silence was truly solemn, as if nature had held its breath as a sign of deep respect. One late evening, when the sun had hidden behind heavy clouds, her breathing grew slower. She slowly closed her eyes, sinking into that very trance that had once saved her on the trail. But this time, she had absolutely no intention of returning to this harsh reality. The transition was very gentle, like an autumn yellow leaf falling onto a perfectly still body of water. She left this world forever, leaving behind a great story of boundless love. Thus ended the earthly story of a woman whose name had dissolved into the endless flow of time. Her quiet passing was just as utterly serene as her great life's feat. Have you ever wondered how often true heroes remain unknown in dry historical chronicles? Answer this question in the comments below this video and share your thoughts. In the next chapter, we'll discuss in detail the legacy left behind by this incredibly brave woman. The act of one simple woman may seem insignificant in the context of an entire people's exodus. However, great history is built precisely from such invisible, yet fundamental building blocks of human sacrifice. The dry bread she gave away became the very life-saving energy that enabled the family to survive that period. The food she voluntarily gave up turned into a direct investment in the next generation. It was a crystal-clear act of passing on life from the one who was leaving to those who remained. Pieces of dry root flatbread are incredibly high in calories and possess a unique ability to sustain strength. By sharing this last bread, she provided the minimum energy necessary for survival over the course of 3 days. This minimum allowed them to preserve precious body heat and absolute clarity of thought. Without this extra energy, the icy wind of the Great Plains could easily have claimed more lives. A simple meal took on a sacred meaning, becoming an unquestionable symbol of hope and absolute salvation. In traditional societies, a group's successful survival has always depended directly on its capacity for mutual aid. But what happened on that dusty trail went beyond mere collective support. It was a fully conscious act of sharing one's own resources at the immense expense of one's basic needs. Such extraordinary deeds form the moral backbone of a tribe, becoming important legends for future generations. The memory of such events incredibly strengthens social bonds within any human community. The story of this incredible journey was passed down exclusively within a small circle, without the slightest unnecessary publicity. The peoples of the plains were not at all accustomed to boasting about their suffering or flaunting their profound hardships to the world. This secret knowledge was treasured as the most precious lesson about the true cost of life. Listening to this quiet tale, the young people learned to appreciate every piece of bread on their table. They clearly understood that someone had once paid the highest possible price for their very existence. The brave mother's physical decline served as a stark reminder of the severity of those harsh autumn trials. Her death on the reservation was by no means a futile or senseless accident of blind fate. It was the entirely logical conclusion to the pact she had made with herself on the trail. Having given all her strength, she passed away, forever making room for new sturdy branches to grow. This is a very harsh but natural law of nature, one that indigenous peoples have always understood perfectly well. Life on the reservation continued unabated, demanding new efforts and adaptation to ever-changing conditions. But those who had miraculously survived thanks to that very piece of bread carried a special spark within them. They were distinguished by incredible resilience and refused to give in to the numerous hardships of their new way of life. In their veins flowed the blood of a man who had forever conquered 3 days of absolute starvation and the cold wind. This invisible, powerful force was passed down genetically, greatly strengthening the resilience of the entire family. The cultural heritage of the Lakota is incredibly rich with such examples of the hidden heroism of the simplest people. Their rich folklore contains a vast number of stories about self-sacrifice for the good of their people. However, the incident of 1838 always stands out for its harsh realism and the frightening ordinariness of what took place. There was no magic or saving intervention by higher powers in this long rescue effort. There was only an incredibly strong human will and a single small piece of dry prairie bread. When assessing events of the distant past, historians too often focus on the large-scale movements of human masses, the staggering numbers of casualties, and the kilometers traveled reliably obscure individual human tragedies. But to truly understand an era in depth, one must view it through the lens of a single family. It is there, in the minutest details of daily life, that the true drama of any forced resettlement lies hidden. The fate of a single mother speaks far more eloquently about resettlement than thick volumes of dry reports. An empty leather bag was kept for a very long time as the family's most precious heirloom. It had absolutely no material value, but its emotional significance was truly immense. Touching the worn, dry leather instantly brought to mind the icy wind of the Great Plains. This simple object served as a silent rebuke to any display of selfishness or unacceptable weakness of spirit. It always served as a reminder that true love is measured by one's willingness to give up what is most essential. The relentless passage of time has smoothed out the sharp edges of pain, leaving only a very gentle sadness and deep respect. The Woman's Act has become an integral part of the vast mosaic of North American history. It vividly demonstrates that even in the darkest of times, human beings are capable of great light. This light does not burn at all, but rather gently warms those who sincerely remember their roots. And as long as this memory lives on, so too does that very invisible spark of human life. Survival under conditions of extreme forced displacement always leaves incredibly deep scars on people's psyches. Adapting to a completely new environment requires a radical restructuring of all the body's internal systems. Those who have endured true starvation permanently alter their fundamental attitude toward any resources. Every crumb of food takes on the highest value, something completely incomprehensible to a well-fed and prosperous person. This brutal experience forever divides life into before and after the harsh ordeal. On the reservations, the problem of quality food remained extremely acute for many decades afterward. The rations promised by the government were very often delayed or arrived spoiled and unfit for consumption. Under such conditions, the survival skills honed on the dusty trail became vital. The ability to make do with the bare minimum and to ration scarce supplies wisely reliably saved people from mass starvation. The example set by a mother who shared a flatbread served as an excellent practical guide during the harshest winter months. The psychological aspect of losing a loved one under such new circumstances was particularly difficult to bear. The bitterness of an irreplaceable loss mingled with the need to constantly and ceaselessly fight for one's very existence. These busy people had practically no time left to observe all the traditional mourning rituals at length. People were forced to bury their grief deep inside, focusing exclusively on immediate concerns. This created a state of constant internal tension that severely wore down the nervous system day after day. The loss of their familiar, boundless landscape also had a devastating effect on the tribe's spiritual well-being. For the Lakota, the vast land was not merely a place of habitation, but a living, thinking being. The severing of this mystical, ancient connection led to a profound collective depression among the indigenous people. Wooden fences and strictly demarcated territories seemed to them like unnatural and frightening structures. They acutely felt cut off from the roots of the mighty tree of their ancient and rich history. Despite all these enormous difficulties, a new life stubbornly forged its way forward. New generations were born into the harsh conditions of the reservations, accepting this reality as a given. They listened to the elders' long tales of the boundless prairies, as if they were fairy tales about imaginary worlds. However, Stories of personal heroism, such as giving up one's last piece of bread, remain crystal clear. These examples of resilience greatly help the young people develop their own very strong inner core. It is crucial to understand that the enormous cost of survival was measured not only in terms of human lives lost. A vast portion of the unique tangible and intangible culture of the people of the boundless plains was irretrievably lost. Many ancient crafts, closely tied to the nomadic way of life, simply became unnecessary. Hunting practices, methods of building dwellings, and the basic principles of sewing traditional clothing all changed. The entire people were forced to reinvent themselves within the very rigid framework of an imposed system. But it was precisely at this critical historical moment that the incredible flexibility of the human mind came to the fore. The Lakota began actively finding entirely new ways to preserve their identity in a changed world. They transferred ancient, complex symbols onto new materials, preserving the coded messages of their ancestors. Songs and traditional dances took on new, profound meanings, helping them cope with the unbearable pain of loss. Their culture did not die at all. It transformed in order to survive this long historical winter. The experience of incredible self-sacrifice became one of the main cornerstones of this renewed culture. The idea that the well-being of the extended family is always more important than personal comfort took on paramount importance. In the harsh conditions of limited resources, selfishness was equated with the gravest betrayal of the entire clan. A simple leather bag and the memory of dry bread were far more effective than any prohibitions. They effectively shaped a very strict moral code of conduct for all the inhabitants of the small settlement. Looking back over the years, we can say with certainty that the mother's sacrifice was fully justified. The lineage of her large family was not broken at all in the cold autumn steppes of that terrible year. Her descendants grew up successfully, built their own strong families, and continued to weave the fabric of history. They have carefully preserved, through the decades, the memory of the woman who gave them this future. This bright memory has become their greatest shield against all the possible hardships of the modern world. Every difficult mile traveled and every crumb of bread shared found its true meaning. History has proven time and again that investing in life always yields the most generous rewards. The sacrifice of a single courageous person has the power to alter the course of countless other lives. Herein lies the great, paradoxical power of absolute maternal self-sacrifice. It is an ironclad law that works without fail throughout all ages and across every continent. The Great Plains remember perfectly well every step taken by those who have crossed their boundless expanses. The wind, roaming freely through the tall dry grass, faithfully preserves the whispers of thousands of voices gone forever. This land was a completely silent witness to the greatest tragedies and incredible acts of heroism. It offered no judgment whatsoever and never intervened, remaining utterly neutral toward all who passed through. Nature simply laid down its own very harsh rules of the game, strictly demanding their unquestioning observance. The autumn landscape of that distant year, 1838, was forever etched into the genetic memory of the survivors. Low, gray clouds, withered, stiff grass, and a cold wind that pierced to the very bone. These basic elements became the harsh backdrop for the drama that unfolded far from the civilized world. There were absolutely no spectators here capable of fully appreciating the scale of the human feat unfolding before them. There was only one woman, her resolute determination, and the endless dusty road to the west. The complete absence of written records makes such stories even more precious and fragile. They exist in the world only as long as there is someone to tell them aloud. The oral tradition of passing on information always requires incredible accuracy and deep respect for detail. The storytellers had absolutely no right to embellish events or alter the essence of what happened on the plains. The truth about those 3 days of starvation had to be told exactly as it was. The silence of the most exhausted woman during the journey is also a crucial element of this story. She did not complain about her fate at all, nor did she demand sympathy from her numerous companions. Her silence was a manifestation of the highest degree of focus on the goal she had set for herself. Any conversation would have sapped precious energy that was critically needed for physical movement. Hidden within this absolute silence was a truly steely will, capable of moving mountains. Weather conditions on these plains in the fall are extremely unstable and subject to very sudden changes. A warm, sunny day can give way quite suddenly to an icy storm or very thick fog. The ability to correctly interpret these changes and prepare for them in advance saved many lives. But when resources are exhausted to the limit, even the deepest knowledge proves utterly powerless. At such moments, one can only rely on the endurance of one's own weakened body. The route they were following was by no means a smooth road. These were old animal trails, crisscrossed by deep ravines and dried-up riverbeds. Walking across rough terrain always demands constant and strenuous effort from all of a person's muscle groups. For an exhausted, starving body, each such ravine became a very serious and dangerous obstacle. Navigating the terrain mercilessly sapped the last crumbs of strength still remaining in their bodies. The art of survival on the Great Plains had been honed over many long millennia. The Lakota knew perfectly well how to find shelter from the wind and where to find a life-saving sip of water. But forced relocation instantly shattered all their familiar ways of interacting with the environment. They suddenly found themselves in the position of newcomers on their own, thoroughly familiar land. It was a cruel paradox that made the situation even more tragic and utterly hopeless. Today, those same plains look completely different, crisscrossed by a network of modern highways. Cars race past at breakneck speeds, the very places where a struggle for survival once unfolded. It is incredibly difficult for modern people to imagine what it's like to walk for several days in a row. It is even more nearly impossible to comprehend the state of complete exhaustion in the absence of any food. We are securely shielded from this experience by a very thick wall of comfort and technological progress. But if you simply stop at the side of the road and step out into the dry autumn steppe, if you slowly close your eyes and listen closely to the monotonous sound of the cool northern wind, you can for a moment clearly catch echoes of that distant era of great trials. The silence of the Great Plains speaks far more eloquently than any thick history book or archival document. It reliably preserves the truth about just how incredibly strong the human spirit can be. Studying such stories allows us to look at our own problems in a completely new light. What now seems to us an insurmountable obstacle pales in comparison to the struggles of survival in the past. Engaging with the past gives us a unique tool for reevaluating our life priorities and values. It teaches us to deeply respect willpower and the remarkable capacity for absolute self-sacrifice. These are the most important lessons that the Silent Plains are ready to teach anyone who is willing to listen. As we conclude our narrative, it is crucial to reflect on the significance of this story for the entire modern world. The era of great migrations and harsh survival in wild territories has long since been left far behind. However, the basic principles of human behavior in extreme situations have not changed at all over time. The ability to put the interests of loved ones above one's own comfort remains a clear sign of greatness. This act of self-sacrifice is perfectly understandable to anyone, regardless of their cultural background. Modern society too often focuses on individual success and personal material gain. In our endless pursuit of comfort, we sometimes forget the importance of strong social bonds. The story of this Lakota woman serves as a vivid reminder that true strength lies in unity. Only by sincerely caring for one another can we overcome truly serious global crises. This is an absolutely universal law of survival that works without fail in any historical era. We can also learn an invaluable lesson from the way she accepted inevitable hardships. Her unwavering calm and complete lack of complaint in the face of mortal danger command deep respect. Instead of wasting precious energy on panic, she focused on concrete actions. This approach, based on fully accepting the situation and seeking a rational solution, is extremely effective. It helps one maintain clarity of mind, even during life's darkest and most difficult times. The indigenous people's careful stewardship of food and natural resources deserves special attention. Thrift and mindful consumption were not trendy modern fads, but a matter of physical survival. Every drop of water and every crumb of dry bread had its own high and well-founded value. Today, in this complex era of overconsumption, we have much to learn from the inhabitants of the Great Plains. Sincere respect for the planet's resources is a reliable guarantee of our shared prosperous future. Equally important is the profound theme of preserving the memory of the feats of our nameless ancestors. Great history is not written solely by generals and politicians in high-ranking government offices. It is continuously shaped by ordinary people who perform quiet yet fundamentally important deeds for the world. To remember them is to honor the solid foundation upon which our present is built. This memory makes us much stronger, binding generations together with an invisible yet very strong thread. Exploring the details of the daily lives of the indigenous peoples of North America easily dispels many popular stereotypes. Behind the familiar image of fierce warriors lies a complex culture with deep philosophical and moral foundations. Understanding these ancient foundations helps us gain a much deeper appreciation for the diversity of human experience on our planet. It teaches us genuine tolerance and deep respect for other ways of perceiving the world around us. Significantly broadening our historical perspective makes our own thinking more flexible and open-minded. The maternal sacrifice, described in detail in this video, is a universal archetype of world culture. We regularly encounter similar stories in the ancient myths and legends of a wide variety of peoples around the world. This clearly indicates that the desire to protect our offspring is deeply ingrained in us by nature. Awareness of this powerful biological and spiritual connection unites all people on planet Earth. We are all grateful descendants of those who once gave everything for our very existence. The next time you suddenly face very serious life challenges or problems, just remember this woman, stubbornly walking across the cold autumn steppe without a morsel of food. Think about that unyielding willpower that drove her to take each new step. This memory can be an excellent source of motivation for overcoming your own difficult obstacles. Human potential is truly limitless when guided by a noble and righteous purpose. Our channel strives to do more than just tediously recount dry facts from old history textbooks. We sincerely want to show you real people, with their pain, fears, and incredible triumphs. By delving deeply into the details of their daily lives, we gain a much better understanding of the motivations behind their historical decisions. This documentary approach makes the past completely tangible and understandable to today's general audience. We will definitely continue to seek out the most captivating and incredibly instructive stories from the past for you. The story of this courageous Lakota woman is a monumental tribute to the human spirit and the boundless love of a mother. She teaches us to truly cherish life and to be deeply grateful for what we have. This story will stay with us forever as an eternal reminder of the power of complete self-sacrifice. May her quiet heroism inspire you daily to perform acts of kindness in your own life. And may the bright memory of such people never fade from the annals of humanity. What part of this incredible survival story struck you the most? In the comments, suggest topics or events from the lives of Native American peoples that you'd like to see in our future videos. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new in-depth dives into history.